The spread of Roman Catholic and Anglican churches in Africa, a legacy of influence, controversy, and exploitation. During the colonial era, Roman Catholic and Anglican churches were established in nearly every community across regions such as eastern and southern Nigeria, as well as other parts of Africa. These churches, often named after European saints and martyrs, e.g. St. Peter Anglican Church or St. Joseph Catholic Church, reflected not only European origins, but also the cultural and political imposition of colonial powers, purpose and influence, cultural domination, or spiritual enrichment. Cultural and religious domination. The naming of churches after European saints was not merely an act of reverence, but a deliberate strategy to replace African religious and cultural values with European ideals. Indigenous beliefs were often dismissed as inferior, pagan, or even barbaric. The church became a tool of colonial control, entrenching European dominance over African societies. Question: was the spread of Christianity a spiritual mission, or was it a method of cultural erasure designed to break African identity and resistance? Can Christianity in Africa truly be called African when its foundation is so deeply rooted in European traditions? Economic exploitation offerings and tithes collected from African congregants were frequently funneled to European religious centers such as the Vatican for Catholic churches, or the Church of England for Anglican churches. African congregations, often living in poverty, were financing institutions thousands of miles away. Question: why should African communities struggling with poverty continue to fund European institutions? What has Africa truly gained from this one-sided economic relationship, and why is this exploitation still tolerated in the modern era? Naming tradition, a celebration, or a subjugation? Churches in Africa were named after European saints and martyrs from early Christian history, creating a symbolic connection to the broader Christian community. However, this practice raises uncomfortable questions about the erasure of African identity. Why were African saints and cultural icons not celebrated in these naming traditions? Was this exclusion a subtle yet intentional reminder of European supremacy, designed to keep African believers tied to a foreign heritage rather than their own? Comparative reflection: retaining identity or losing it. Countries like India, China, and others colonized by European powers managed to retain much of their cultural and religious heritage despite British and European influences. Their temples, traditions, and spiritual practices remain uniquely theirs, even as they absorbed certain elements of modernity. Comparison: why did Africa lose so much of its indigenous identity, while India and China resisted cultural erasure? Could the aggressive imposition of Christianity in Africa have played a larger role in this loss? Unlike in Africa, colonized regions such as India kept Hinduism, Buddhism, and Islam at the forefront, blending colonial influences with local traditions rather than erasing them. Key question: was Africa targeted for deeper cultural domination because of its perceived vulnerability, or was it a deliberate strategy to disconnect African societies from their roots and make them more compliant to colonial rule? Examples of honored saints: a narrow lens of faith. The saints commonly commemorated in African churches include St. Peter, crucified under Emperor Nero; St. Paul, beheaded under Nero; St. Mary, central to Christian devotion; St. Stephen, the first Christian martyr; St. Agnes, martyred during Emperor Diocletian's reign; St. Cecilia, patroness of music, martyred under Roman persecution; St. Lawrence, deacon martyred under Valerian; St. Sebastian, a soldier executed for his faith; Saint Perpetua and Saint Felicity, African martyrs from Carthage, killed under Emperor Septimius Severus. Saint Lucy, martyred during Diocletianic persecution. Other apostolic martyrs honored include Saint Andrew, crucified, Saint Bartholomew, flayed alive and beheaded, Saint Thomas, speared to death, Saint James the Greater, beheaded by Herod Agrippa, Saint Jude, Thaddeus, clubbed to death, Saint Matthew, stabbed to death. Additional notable saints: Saint Ignatius of Antioch, thrown to wild beasts in the Colosseum. Saint George, a soldier martyred under Diocletian. Saint Valentine, martyred under the Roman Empire. Saint Ursula, martyred alongside 11,000 virgins by the Huns. Question: why does African Christianity emphasize these European and Roman figures while largely ignoring African contributions? Where are the celebrations of Saint Cyprian of Carthage, Saint Augustine of Hippo, or Ethiopian saints like Saint Yared? Has African Christianity been deliberately steered? Why does African Christianity emphasize these European and Roman figures while largely ignoring African contributions? Where are the celebrations of Saint Cyprian of Carthage, Saint Augustine of Hippo, or Ethiopian saints like Saint Yared? Has African Christianity been deliberately steered to view Europe as the sole cradle of spiritual authority? Economic and cultural implications. The financial contributions of African congregations have historically enriched European religious institutions, leaving African churches dependent on foreign hierarchies. This one-sided relationship raises urgent questions about its fairness and relevance today. How did these economic ties benefit African communities? Was this wealth transfer another form of colonial exploitation disguised as faith? Should African churches today focus on local empowerment rather than perpetuating this historical injustice? Legacy: a controversial inheritance. The names and traditions introduced by European missions remain deeply embedded in African Christianity. Yet, their legacy is fraught with contradictions. On the one hand, they brought education and community structure. On the other, they were instrumental in exploiting African resources and suppressing African culture. Call for action. Why should African communities continue to uphold traditions tied to their colonial past? Can African Christianity reclaim its autonomy and honor its own heritage while engaging with the global Christian community? Towards a decolonized Christianity. While Roman Catholic and Anglican churches have undeniably shaped African spirituality, their methods, motives, and legacy demand scrutiny. Unlike other nations that preserved their cultural essence, Africa bore the brunt of cultural erasure under colonial religious systems. It is time for African Christianity to confront these uncomfortable truths, reclaim its spiritual identity, and establish an expression of faith that is free from the shadows of exploitation and colonialism.